Okay, so I think this is my third video on me moving to New York City. And I talked about first impressions of the city. And the second video I'd done was odd jobs, how I survived. And then I got into real estate. So that was 2000. I took a license in 2015. And people now laugh and joke and say, well, it's obvious that you got into real estate in New York, but it wasn't really. So the story is as follows. I was going to buy a house and I was using Groupon a lot. People use Groupon. I don't use it so much now, but I did in the city a lot. And there was a real estate license. You could take the real estate license course at the famous New York Real Estate Institute in Midtown Manhattan. You could take that for $99. And I thought, why not? Because I was buying a house at the time. And I thought, maybe it'll just educate me for $99, nothing to lose. So I took it, didn't end up buying that house. That house didn't work. And obviously passed the license. I studied, I was working at the time full time in the city. I was working in business development. So I used to go after work 2-3 times a week, depending on the schedule. Because the schedule, I don't know what it's like now, but then it was, because you have modules, you have different classes on different subjects that make up the whole curriculum of the license. And they weren't in any particular order, so I was just going through them as I needed them. And yeah, great school. Yeah, was taught by some great instructors. Learned a lot because I knew nothing about New York City real estate. I knew nothing about any real estate. I hadn't owned a house in the UK, and I'd never been a realtor in the UK, so I didn't really know what the drill was. But if there's anywhere in the world you want to be a realtor, that's New York City. And I can only talk from experience. But so yeah, passed the course and then became a property manager. I worked for a brokerage in Brooklyn, in Bay Ridge, Bensonhurst, a commercial broker. And that didn't work out too well. I wasn't given much guidance. So I came out of that and moved to a role in Manhattan. I started as a doorman. I don't know if I covered this before. I was a doorman in a luxury condo. So I was able to learn the ins and outs of how a building worked, even as a doorman, Became a property manager. Obviously had my license at that point. And then moved to another company, which was where I really started to learn. And deeply grateful to this company for all the knowledge that I was given and the experiences and the great people I worked with. I worked with some people who were very experienced in New York City real estate, people that had been in it for 30 years. So I learned a lot from them and met some great agents along the way and learned from them. And met some not so great agents and learned not what to do from them. Because you'll always do that in life. You'll always find people who teach you something valuable, and you'll also meet people who'll teach you what not to do. And you'll get that in any walk of life, anywhere in the world. But the trick is to identify it and play to it and realize that's something that you shouldn't be doing or something that you should be doing, and lean into that bit. So, work with a lot of great people. I was very lucky, like I said, to work for a company that was a landlord, a property manager, and they had a brokerage in-house. So the whole thing, and a developer, sorry. So they ran the whole gamut. A company that's been around for a while. And this particular landlord, their assets, a lot of their holdings were, and where I started to work was the Upper West Side. So that was an area that I'd heard of but didn't really know much about. And it was great learning about the area, very historic. A lot of these buildings up there 100 years old. So it was great to experience these buildings firsthand and see the architecture and the layout and all this amazing stuff. There was one building in particular that I was very familiar with and done a lot of work within, done a lot of business in this particular building. And it was 12 stories, 12 floors. And it used to be 2 apartments a floor. It was either left or right as you came out of the elevator or went up the steps. And it was then chopped up into, I think, 85 or 86 apartments. So big difference. But when talking to certain people, superintendent, agents, the owner, and learning all these kind of stories and learning all these facts and history about it, it was very fascinating. And then to be able to talk to potential renters about that, yeah, it was great, because I'm a student of civil engineering. That's what I studied at college. So I love anything the built environment. So it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Going on the roof, watching how the boiler was cleaned, and everything in between. Watching full renovations, partial renovations. When somebody moves out, and at a minimum, this particular landlord was on top of their game. So when somebody moved out, say I had a year lease, as a minimum, the apartment would have the floors refinished and it would be painted, depending on the level of wear. And it may be more wear if somebody had been in there for 2 years, but as a minimum, it was floors and paint. So the floors, they're original hardwood floors in this building. So they would be sanded down. They would then be applied with a coat of polyvinyl, and they'd be then given another coat of polyvinyl, so 2 coats. So, the original hardwood floors were whatever they were made of. Oak, I think. I can't remember. But because it was such high quality wood, they could just be sanded and resealed over and over, because it was such high quality. Things were done properly in those days. Things were made with longevity in mind, where today it's a throwaway society. But so that was great. And again, a minimum of a year's lease. That was the minimum lease. So that would be the minimum what would be done to that apartment, ready for a new tenant. So yeah, lots of experience on the Upper West Side. And like I said, met lots of great agents, learnt from a lot of great agents, and became friends with some good agents. And yeah, just had an amazing time meeting some fantastic people from all over the world, and renting apartments to them, getting to know them. And yeah, it was amazing. It was a perfect job for me. Perfect job. And like I said, I'm extremely grateful, will always be grateful to that company for giving me that opportunity and affording me those experiences. And like I said, met lots of people, leased apartments to some wonderful people, leased apartments from, I think the cheapest apartment I ever rented was probably $2,250. $2,300. That was when I first started, maybe 2017, 18. So a studio apartment, maybe 350 square feet, to give you some idea. So 1 room, separate bathroom, separate bedroom. Let's say 300 to 350 square feet, 2250, 2300. That was then. All the way to one bedrooms. Again, I'm going on 2018, 2019 prices. A one bedroom, maybe 3,000 to 3,500, depending on the size. Two bedrooms could be mid to late fours, and all the way up to a three bedroom. The biggest I ever rented was not at that building, another one, but very, very close by, a bit further north on the Upper West Side. I think that was about 7,900 or 8,200, and that was a three bedroom. That's called a Classic 6. So that's 6 main rooms. And again, huge, again from memory, 1,600 to 2,000 square feet. And again, I don't know what the prices are now because I haven't lived in the city for a few years. But they're going to be a lot more now. So yeah, the whole gamut. And obviously meeting these people from all over the world. They weren't necessarily locals renting. Could be people from out of state, could be people from out of the country. And yeah, so the process for me, and I'm just going on the brokerage I worked for, this particular landlord, if you want to rent in the city, let's say 2018, say I had a two bedroom on at 5,000 a month, you would need to earn 40 times the rent. Okay, so 40 times the rent, 10% of that rent is 50, so 200,000, you'd have to earn 200,000. If you didn't earn that, that could be a combination of savings. We want to see the last 2 months checking in savings, your accounts, see how solvent you were. We want to see last year's W-2, your tax return, see what you'd claim, what you declared, what you'd earned, what assets you have, and have a credit score of 720. Again, I don't know if that's changed with that landlord, but it's all much of a muchness. Most landlords in the city are going to want 700. And, you know, 1 month's broker's fee. That's how it used to roll. So on a 5,000 a month apartment, to move in, you've got to give me the first month, 1 month security, and 1 month's broker's fee. That's $15,000 to move in. So you can see, can't you, in comparison. And I had nothing to compare it to. So all I knew was how it worked in New York. And New York is its own animal in the real estate world. But that was what you'd probably be looking at, or what you would be looking at. So let's go back. If you didn't earn 40 times the rent, say you earned 30 times the rent, you could have a guarantor. But the guarantor needed to earn or have, asset-wise, 80 times the rent. So that's 400K. So a lot of times, younger people would have a family member be a guarantor if they came up shy. But it really all depended. Yeah, it really all depended. And then some people just held their own. A couple of stories. I rented an apartment. It was a 2-bedroom, and I think that was maybe 4,700, something like that. I rented to a family of 4, 2 young children, 2 young professionals, and the husband had just finished his residency. He was training to be an oncologist, and his residency, sorry, the other way around. He was about to start residency, so he'd done his training, and his training salary was 90,000 ish, nearly 100,000, and the wife's salary I think was about 100,000 as well. So they qualified on that, but he was then starting residency, and his salary went from 90,000 to I think about $250,000. So it just shows you what the earning potential was and the fact that people needed to earn X to be able to live in the city to that degree. Yeah, so they didn't need a guarantor. And it was a whole gamut of people, different kind of people who retired or who were semi-retired in their 50s maybe and wanted to rent in the city. And they came in with retirement funds. I had a couple, and one of them was an ex-vice president for a telecoms company. And his monthly pension was about $16,000 or $17,000, and they were renting a 2-bedroom for about $5,000 a month. So it was easy for them. You see, it just shows you how the money works and what people need to rent there, and how some people's assets are able to support that. And another story. So we had a unit in that first building that I talked about, and it had a complete renovation. Had a brand new kitchen put in, a brand new bathroom. It had a fireplace, because in that particular building you had units A and B, the line. So in a building like that, you'd have the A line, the B line, the C line. So meaning the vertical going up. So the A and the B line in this particular building was either side of a working fireplace. So they were desirable apartments because they had a working fireplace. Much to FDNY's dismay. You know, obviously nobody wants a working fireplace in an apartment, but these were ones that were, which there are many in the city. Many apartments do have working fireplaces, but so they're always desirable. So anyway, this one was done up, real nice open plan kitchen, really nice bathroom, one bed, one bath, but open plan kitchen, living, dining. And I think that was on for 33, 34. It's a while ago. Anyway, this was renovated and I stuck it up on Street Easy. I think I stuck it up maybe late afternoon, and by about 9 o'clock that night, I had about 20 inquiries. And somebody said, or 2 or 3 people said, can I come and look at it in the morning, Saturday morning? Yeah. So I went there and showed it around. It was a young girl, and she said, I love it. What do I need to do? You know, I gave her the lease application. And, you know, sometimes you give people an application. There's 2 kinds of people you meet. People who come in and say, oh, this is fantastic. I love this. Love it, love it, love it. Send me an application. You'd never hear from them again. And you have other people who are a bit more quieter and strategic. And they say, yeah, this is nice. Send me an application. And it was normally the quiet people that got you the full application with all supporting documents within a couple of hours or by that evening. So anyway, this girl, young, I think mid-20s, had started a job for a well-known media company. And she was earning, I think, about 50 grand. So she couldn't afford it. You know, 40 times the rent on that, 30, 60, that'd be about 120, 130. Couldn't afford it. And I said, well, you're going to have a guarantor. She said, can I have my parents? Yeah, okay. This is the criteria, 80 times the rent. And okay, let me get onto that. So I gave her the application. She went away. She was going to get everything done. The next day, she then told me her situation. So obviously she needed a guarantor. She said, my parents can be a guarantor, but here's their situation. They are currently en route back from the Middle East. They've lived there for the last 10 years. The father was in finance. Okay, so they don't have anywhere to live in the US, but they're on their way back to move back to the US after 10 years in the Middle East. Okay. Bank accounts, they got US bank accounts. Yeah, they've got one. It was a bit of a grey area. And she said, the best thing to do, would you mind speaking to my mother? Of course. So I think the day passed, the mother called me So the situation was this: they had been living in the Middle East for the last 10 years. The husband worked in finance, her father, and they're on their way back. So they didn't have a house in the US. They were moving back, I think, to the West Coast and to rent somewhere. So I said, I need to see, obviously I can't see your W-2 unless you can get me a W-2. You're paid by a Middle East company. I need to see that. I need to see how much you earn. Credit score obviously wasn't really relevant because they've lived out of the US for 10 years. So the bottom line was they had assets with a wealth manager. And the mother said to me, listen, this is a situation. We're coming back. We've got assets worth X. And would that suffice? And I asked the landlord, and the landlord said, well, as long as we can see it in writing and we can get confirmation from the asset manager. And the mother then said, okay, I'm going to get my asset manager, which the asset manager then emailed me and sent me a letter proving their assets. So they had assets close to, or just over 10 million. So that was enough, regardless of just coming back to the US. So there was two other issues going on here. In those days, the laws changed in New York slightly after that, or closely after that period, where people could pay up front. They could pay the year rent up front, and they might get a bit of a discount. And I said this to her, and she said, the daughter loves it. Can we sign a 2-year lease and I'll give you the money up front? I said, yeah, of course you can. Because the thing with that, the guarantee is that we've got all the money up front. So you're guaranteed. You've got the rent for 2 years up front. The landlord can earn some interest on that money. And yeah, that's the most watertight guarantee you can find. So that was one thing she wanted to do, which she did. The second thing, the problem was because she was the guarantor, the mother, the lease was still in the daughter's name. So the daughter is responsible to pay the rent at $3,500 or whatever it was. So the daughter needed to see all her information too, her W-2, her last 2 months checking and savings, see what her credit score, run a check on her. And she had, from memory, 10 grand in her checking account, which is still quite a lot of money. And the landlord said, we need to show more money, or I want to see more money in the daughter's account because she's on the lease. She's the leasee. And I said this to the mother, and the mother said, yeah, no probs. We're going to get back to New York, or we're going to get back to California somewhere, I think. Within a couple of days, we're going to open a new bank account for her, the daughter, and we're going to transfer some money over. How much do you want to see? I said, well, even though you're paying the money up front, I want to see 6 to 12 months liquid in her account. Within 2 days, I'd been sent a statement from a brand new bank account opened by the mother in the daughter's name, and there was $250,000 in there. And so yeah, that was a great situation to navigate, and it was nice to deal with people who were decision makers. That's the thing. Always be a decision maker. Never sit on the fence, whether the decision's right or wrong, but be a decision maker. And the mother was, and that's why the daughter got the apartment. But it was nice to deal with people who made decisions and were creative. And the real estate game is very creative, either buying, selling, or renting. So yeah, needless to say, that young lady moved into the apartment and loved it, obviously. But it was amazing to deal with people and that was one of many, lots of different people, high net worth individuals who were renting apartments in the city, and people who were young, who had wealthy parents or wealthy family members, and then people who were older, all the way up to the 60s or in their 60s, who were on paper had a few million, access to a few million liquid, you know, and that could be a combination of cash, stocks, investments, real estate even. Because if you're coming and saying I'm worth 4 million, you might be worth 1 million cash, rest of it stocks and real estate. So yeah, that was a very interesting time of dealing with renters in the city. And like I said, that law changed where you could not pay a year up front. And that was partly to do with people who were moving to the city were able to just snatch up apartments by paying a year or 2 years up front. And that was obviously people with deep pockets. Other people weren't able to get a look in. So it was changed. That law, I believe, was changed to make the level playing field for everybody. But yeah, some great times there, and lots more stories. And I'll continue with some more stories in a later video. I've been away for a while. I've been very busy, but I'm now going to come back and continue with some more regular videos. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any experiences of renting in the city, please let me know in the comments below. Anything that you want me to talk about as I continue to share my life in New York City, living there for 10 years and working in real estate. Yeah, just let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching. And again, as usual, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. It works wonders for the algorithm, and it really inspires me to make more content and share more of my story. So I hope you enjoyed today, and see you next time.